But it's funny how, universities are
See that, Tim? Very good to meet you. All right, how you doing?
Honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen, and of course fellow riflemen, a very warm welcome to Horseguards Parade for this evening's sounding retreat ceremony. My name is Colonel Nick Illich and I'll be one of two narrators for this evening's events. Whilst we've been waiting for our royal guests to arrive, we have just been entertained brilliantly by members of the Somerset and Durham Army Cadet Force bands, who this evening perform alongside both our regular and reserve bands as part of the sounding retreat. The cadets are an important pillar of the regiment, alongside our regulars, reserves, veterans and our families. They also provide an important visible reminder of the rifles in the counties, towns and cities from where we recruit. The regiment is proud of the fact that 21% of all Army cadets across the UK are rifles cap badged, with over 250 ACF and 55 combined cadet force detachments. This evening you witnessed 21 cadets from Durham, 23 from Somerset and 2 from Yorkshire. In the unlikely event that we have to evacuate Horse Guards, please listen to your nearest stand marshals who will make themselves known to you, and please follow their instructions in a safe and rifleman fashion. And at the end of the evening, please remain in place to allow sufficient time for the royal visitors to move from the tented enclosure to my front before departing yourselves. So sit back, enjoy and be inspired.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a very warm welcome to Horseguards Parade for this evening's sounding retreat ceremony. My name is James Holland, and I also have the privilege of narrating you through what promises to be a musical and visual spectacular of the sound, history and traditions of some of the most famous regiments of the British Army. The Rifles was formed on the 1st of February 2007 in the crucible of operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was forged from 4 of the finest infantry regiments in the British Army. the Devonshire and Dorset Light Infantry, the Light Infantry, the Royal Gloucestershire, Berkshire and Wiltshire Light Infantry, and the Royal Green Jackets. These forming regiments gave the Rifles an extraordinary lineage dating back to 1685 and an unbreakable heritage across many of England's counties.
Before we continue, we now have a special message from our Colonel Commandant, General Sir Patrick Sanders.
A very warm welcome to the Rifles Sounding Retreat 2022. As a regiment, the Rifles endeavours to hold this event every 5 years, allowing us to showcase our unique military musical capabilities whilst bringing the regular, reserve, cadet, associations and communities pillars of the regiment together. We are the British Army's largest infantry regiment with 7 battalions and over 4,000 riflemen and 12,000 cap-badged cadets. The battalions are at the forefront of overseas operations, offering our people more roles, variety and locations than anyone else. We have a no-nonsense approach to soldiering, which makes us one of the finest fighting units, forged over centuries of conflict protecting the nation. Riflemen were the first soldiers to wear camouflage in place of red tunics, first to use rifles rather than muskets, and were chosen to be swift and bold. We have strong bonds of camaraderie, tradition and professionalism which set us apart from others and which you will see on display this evening. Every rifleman, past, present and future, is an important member of our regimental family. The physical and mental well-being of this family is at the forefront of what we do. The Always a Rifleman programme was launched last autumn as a bold new undertaking to provide support to those in need until they can be given professional counselling and treatment. To date, the Always a Rifleman programme has managed to help dozens of our riflemen, and more veterans are volunteering as mentors. I would be grateful for your encouragement and support of this essential initiative of which we as a regiment can be justifiably proud. Turning to the wider comradeship which exists between all riflemen during service or afterwards, we know that Rifles veterans are becoming increasingly keen to reunite socially with their contemporaries. We've therefore created the Riflemen's Association, membership of which will be open to veterans of our forming and antecedent regiments with branches based countrywide. For those of you who have brought together your former company groups to be here tonight, I thank you, and I encourage you to continue the momentum of these reunions. As our association grows, we hope to bring increasing numbers of our veterans back into the Rifles family, in turn allowing us to support them when necessary. But for now, let us just enjoy the spectacle, celebrating our unique history and traditions, and then reflect especially on our fallen and those now suffering in Ukraine as the retreat culminates with sunset. It gives me immense pride this evening to say, I am a rifleman, swift and bold.
This evening, all 5 pillars of the regiment have gathered at Horseguards. There will be over 250 musicians and artists who will be performing this evening. On parade, in addition to the band and bugles of the Rifles, we are delighted to welcome the English National Opera, the Salamanca and Waterloo bands and bugles of 6 and 7 Rifles, representing the reserve pillar. We also have the band of the Brigade of Gurkhas, the Koreanis band and bugle corps from Germany, the buglers branch of the Riflemen's Association, representing the veterans. You've just witnessed the Somerset and Durham Army Cadet Force bands. And we also have members of the 95th Rifles Battle Reenactment and Living History Society who will add an extra dimension to this evening's ceremony.
The history of the antecedents of the forming regiments of the Rifles goes back over 330 years, when the Duke of Beaufort's and the Earl of Huntingdon's regiments, which later became the Devonshire Regiment and the Somerset Light Infantry respectively, were raised in June 1685 by the order of King James II. King James II has another historic link with this evening's ceremony, as it was by his order that the ceremony of beating retreat was introduced, when soldiers were ordered to beat drums and parade in the streets to mark the end of a day, the lowering of the flags, and the closing of the garrison gates. The beating of drums, the original mode of signalling orders, is where the name beating retreat originates from. It was also originally called a watch setting and was initiated at sunset by the firing of a single round from the evening gun. However, it was during the period of the 7 Years' War of 1754 to 1763, fought between Britain and France and their respective allies in Europe, North America and India, where the rifles draw their present-day historic identity. The British Army found itself caught short and underprepared by the woods and forests of North America, as well as the tactics used by the French and their Native American allies. The traditional tactics of fighting in column and line, whilst being dressed in red-jacketed uniforms and carrying heavy equipment, were wholly unsuitable for some terrain and conditions, and not least those in North America of the mid-18th century. As a result, the British Army temporarily introduced into its organisation of battle light infantry, who operated as skirmishers. We were also inspired by our Prussian or Hanoverian allies, who used huntsmen and foresters carrying hunting rifles in this role in Europe, many dressed in green or dark uniforms as an early form of camouflage, evidenced by the uniforms on parade today. These soldiers were drawn from the best and brightest of soldiers of their respective regiments and were trained to operate with a high degree of independence, carrying lighter scales of equipment that made them more maneuverable. The cumbersome drum was replaced by an instrument made from the horn of a bugle, the old French term for the European wild ox, as a means of communication, as its sound could be heard over longer distances. To cover the ground at pace, these soldiers were also expected to march at a much quicker speed than the rest of the infantry, a tradition that continues to this day, at 140 paces to the minute, and also at the double. For this reason, light infantry and rifle regiments throughout their history sound retreat as opposed to beat retreat as the prelude of a sunset ceremony. In a moment, the ceremony will formally begin, and it is perhaps appropriate that the first music you will hear will take us back to North America and origins of the rifles. In addition to light infantry companies being established, in 1755 the British Army raised the 62nd Royal American Regiment, later to become the 60th Regiment, which was recruited locally amongst colonial volunteers. It fought with distinction at Quebec, where it earned its motto, Celer et Audax, or Swift and Bold, from General Wolfe. This was the motto carried forward into the Rifles formation in 2007. The 60th raised a 5th Battalion in 1797 and became the first unit in the British Army to be armed with rifles and wore green uniforms with red facings. At the same time, other loyal volunteers formed militia units that became more famously known as Rangers, such as Rogers Rangers. They served the Crown with varying degrees of distinction in the 7 Years' War, and later the American War of Independence. In a more recent development, the 4th Battalion of the Rifles has become the 4th Battalion, the Rangers, as part of the Army's new Special Operations Brigade. Another example of the Army going back in history for its current structure. The final piece of this first section is Copenhagen. In 1800, an experimental corps of riflemen was established under Colonel Coote Manningham at Shorncliffe Barracks to systemize into doctrine the light infantry experience gained in North America. Like the 5th 60th, they were also dressed in dark green uniforms and were armed with the Patton 1800 infantry rifle, more famously known, of course, as the Baker rifle. Shortly after formation, they were used successfully by Vice Admiral Horatio Nelson as Marines on board his ships at the Battle of Copenhagen in April 1801. Incidentally, alongside another rifles antecedent, the 49th Hertfordshire Regiment of Foot.
Not quite 100 hours. With the stumble.
I did with French.
Thank you very much, sir.
In 1803, the Experimental Corps of Riflemen were designated the 95th Regiment of Foot, or Rifle Regiment, or commonly known as the 95th Rifles. In the years that followed, the 43rd, 51st, 52nd, 68th and 85th Regiments of Foot, all antecedents of the Rifles, were all converted to light infantry, along with the 71st and 90th Regiments of Foot. The march, the lines of Torres Vedras, signifies the start of our Peninsula War chapter for this evening. The Battle of Salamanca, fought on the 22nd of July of 1812 and regarded as the Duke of Wellington's greatest victory, is marked as the Regimental Day of the Rifles.
Well, we are about to be joined by members of the English National Opera to honour the founding father of the Rifles, General Sir John Moore. It was Sir John Moore's inspirational leadership and foresight that successfully established the permanent ethos of light infantry and rifles within the British Army that continues to this day. He created the Light Brigade, consisting of the 43rd and 52nd Light Infantry and the 95th Rifles, which were eventually to become the Light Division. Sir John Moore wanted all light troops to wear dark green uniforms, but the generals, here at Horseguards, insisted that light infantry continued to wear red jackets to allow them to operate both as skirmishers and in formation alongside regiments of the line. Sir John Moore was tragically killed on the 16th of January 1809 during the Battle of Corunna, after the army's famous retreat to that Galician city in the northwest tip of Spain. By any standard, Sir John Moore epitomised everything needed to be the very model of a modern Major General.
We are now joined by members of the 95th Rifles Battle Reenactment and Living History Society, who will take us back to that time to demonstrate the types of weapons and tactics employed over the hills and far away from Flanders, Portugal and Spain, and made famous by the TV drama series Sharpe's Rifles. What you're seeing now are two unfortunate riflemen captured by the French, probably to try and get some information out of them, and they've been led back to the French encampment under guard. And as you can see, the encampment includes camp followers, an important part of campaigning abroad, roughly 15 to 17 women for every 100 soldiers deployed. It was a difficult time for soldiers and those camp followers, all enduring the hardships of the realities of combat. Now, although the pickets forward would have had some support, these two clearly have been unlucky. So I'm sure at some stage they'll need to be able to be saved by friendly forces. So the alarm's been raised, things are happening on the battlefield. And as you can see, members of the 95th Rifles are deploying off the march and adopting skirmishing files in order to cover the ground to the front in what we'd recognise as fire manoeuvre.
And all armed, of course, with the Baker rifle.
All armed with the Baker rifle. Now, the Baker rifle had an effective range of 200 yards. Now, it could clearly hit targets further depending on the standard of the rifleman, which was a great advantage over those carrying the musket, as the French are. Because, of course, the musket only had a range, effective range of 50 yards. That's why we say don't fire until you can see the whites of their eyes. So the riflemen are covering the ground in the skirmishing file. They'll be deploying either in open order, roughly 2 feet apart, or extended order, depending on the ground, much further. And this is why we refer to riflemen and light infantry as flanking soldiers. Not necessarily standing in line waiting to be hit. They would manoeuvre in a typical buddy-buddy system as we recognise them, using a file leader and a comrade, with one always ready to fire his comrade as he's loading behind him. And as you can see, they are basically moving across the ground using fire and... Now the French have deployed a cannon, dangerous for a rifleman, because of course a canister shot would effectively send a large quantity of musket balls towards the rifleman, creating a serious problem. So it's important that they neutralise that cannon as quickly as possible.
One thing that's very noticeable is the darkness of the riflemen's jackets. Work in their favour against the white-fronted Frenchmen.
Absolutely, early form of camouflage taken from our friends and colleagues who the Hanoverian troops, who are very much from the forests of Germany, and also the experience we gained in North America against the 460th.
And the riflemen seem to be firing pretty quickly, Nick. What's the rate of fire on this?
Well, because it's a rifle, it's got a slower rate of fire than a musket, roughly 2 rounds per minute, whereas a musket could fire 4 rounds a minute as long as the musket was actually loaded to start with. The riflemen there are using an interesting fire position used by skirmishers in a supine position, where effectively they've got the feet forward, using their rifle strap and feet as support for more accurate fire. And very famously, Rifleman Tom Plunkett on the retreat to Corunna used this fire position in order to kill a French general at a range of over 300 yards, some say 600 yards. And to prove that it wasn't a fluke, he reloaded and killed the aide-de-camp who was coming to the general's aid before getting back just before being cut down by French cavalry. So the French are now losing the moral components, they're withdrawing. Clearly the rifleman's fire is having a significant effect, clearly being outgunned.
And using whistles.
Using whistles as a form of communications, exactly. The bugle horn will obviously also be used, far more effective than the drum used by line regiments. The riflemen who have been captured have now regained their weapons and have joined into the fight. And it's now sword against bayonet. Of course, in the rifles we refer to bayonets as swords. And so the engagement's over, the battle's been won, and it's now time to go back for tea and medals.
The next march is titled Prince Consort's Own, a title bestowed on the Rifle Brigade who, along with other antecedents of the Rifles, played a significant role in the Crimean War of 1854 to 56, fought against Tsarist Russia. Most British infantry regiments were, by this time, armed with rifles rather than muskets, and after 2 years of fighting, Russian determination to continue the war finally ended. Peace followed with the Treaty of Paris. At the Siege of Lucknow, during the Indian Mutiny of 1857-59, the Union flag was never lowered, even at sunset, as an act of defiance. The defenders of the garrison, the 32nd Cornwall Regiment, earned themselves the title of Light Infantry, and so our next march, Secunderabad, is performed in honour of these illustrious garrisons.
For many, this will be the first time you've witnessed the characteristic marching speed of the Rifles. The swagger of our buglers often leads many to say that the Rifles don't actually march, they rock and roll. So in the next three pieces, we'll hopefully bring this to life with a more contemporary twist. We'll also remember the valour of riflemen, past and present. The fanfare, the Kashmir Gate, written in honour of two buglers who won the Victoria Cross during the Siege of Delhi, 2 of 117 awarded to our antecedents, reinforces the fact that throughout history, our buglers have always been riflemen first and musicians second.
Recent structural changes to the army will see the Royal Gurkha Rifles and the Rifles come together to form a new light division. This will resurrect a historic relationship that was forged under fire during the Indian Mutiny, when the Simur Rifles fought alongside the King's Royal Rifle Corps on Delhi Ridge. We are delighted that this evening we're joined by the band of the Brigade of the Gurkhas, which signifies the resurrection of the Light Division. The next piece of music will be the march Sambre et Meuse, commonly played by our French allies during the two World Wars, and where tonight the Somerset and Durham Army Cadet Force bands will be rejoining the retreat. Since the Second World War, the tempo of operations has not ceased. The Rifles, since formation in 2007, has tragically suffered more casualties than any other regiment on operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so we are honoured that so many veterans of those operations are here this evening, along with family members of those who made the ultimate sacrifice or have suffered life-changing injuries. To signify the importance of those who have served, the Buglers branch of the Riflemen's Association will also join the ceremony during the march, the Light Division.
All the pillars of the regiment are now on parade and watching the ceremony. We're also now approaching the finale of the evening. No sounding retreat ceremony is complete without performance of Zorba the Greek, and we'll also bring our marches to an end with CBQ, written in honour of Lieutenant General Sir Christopher Wallace, a former Colonel Commandant of the Light Division.
We have now reached the finale of the evening. The bugle feature, High on a Hill, that you are about to hear is the unofficial anthem of the Rifles and is guaranteed to raise the goosebumps of every rifle this evening. You will also be rejoined by the ENO We have now reached the finale of the evening. We're about to hear High on a Hill, the unofficial anthem of the Rifles. We will also be rejoined by the ENO, who will perform Hammerstein and Rogers, You Will Never Walk Alone. The launch of the Riflemen's Association is another example and reminder of how we intend to support those who have served and will serve the regiment in the future.
As is a tradition, the evening will now close with the sunset ceremony. Please remember to stand for sunset at the appropriate moment and remain standing for the national anthems of the Ukraine and the United Kingdom that will follow. The mass bands will then march off to the regimental march, mechanised infantry.
Very good, very good. Yeah, yeah. Yes.
Your Royal